And so this morning, you guys are going to get to hear an incredible story of how God restored a marriage. And so maybe you came in, your marriage is a disaster, a wreck, or maybe you're not married and waiting to get married to the love of your life. This is who is not in Tennessee, for the record. If you know, you know. And so just know that there's hope. Just know there's hope. And so without any further delay, you guys welcome the Marlows. Hey, guys. I love that. That's fantastic. Well, yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and get a couple of these.
Yeah, go. Yeah. I told him earlier, I said, well, if you cry, that's fine. And she goes, he's going to be the one crying. How you guys doing?
We're
Wonderful.
Good.
Yeah, you're wonderful?
Wonderful. We'll see.
It's going to be great. It's going to be so much fun. Hey, listen. So we're going to do the same thing we've been doing. Some rapid fire questions. Now, you guys have to answer these separately, okay? I'm going to see if I can get a marital spat going right here in front of everyone, all right? So, first question, favorite cereal?
Fruit Loops.
I recently turned 30, so mine is Honey Bunches of Oats.
You know what happens when you turn 50? Raisin Bran. All right, favorite TV show?
I think most recently, both of us. We've been binging on Great British Baking Show. It's wholesome.
I got nothing.
They help each other. It's great.
And New Girl. We love New Girl.
New Girl, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this section over here, yeah. All right, so night owl or morning person?
We talked about this one, and we're both like, okay, maybe you're a night owl, maybe you're an early bird. No.
Like
we're
a 10 to 1.
Afternoon pigeons.
Afternoon pigeons. I don't know what an afternoon pigeon is. It does not sound pleasant.
No, we're at our best in like 10 to 1.
10 to 1.
Yeah.
10 to 1. Okay. So if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Reading minds.
Oh, no. That's frightening.
It is frightening.
I just want the ring from Green Lantern. You can just make whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's not really a superpower.
He wants to be a superhero,
Right,
not
listen.
with power. He wants the ring.
Just a ring.
You want a Lambo? Green Lambo. Right there.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
Lambo is Lamborghini. So I should specify. All right. So, listen, those are a few fun questions. But why don't y'all tell us a little bit about you now?
Sure. 30, so I'm old now. I work for Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office, have for about 10 years now. About 9 years. For 5 of those years, I've been in Special Victims Unit. All I do is crimes of child maltreatment and sexual assault cases. We've been married for, what year is this? 21? 8 years.
Well, this is starting off great. So, let's have a little counseling session. No, I'm kidding.
2 kids and a half.
Oh.
One on the way.
Yeah.
Due in December.
We'll have that talk in February. Y'all stick around.
That's about it. I do photography on the side. That's about it for me.
I've never been asked to, photographed. What's up with that?
You have to ask him.
Done.
You know.
Oh.
You have to reach
Done.
out.
I'm offended. It's because I'm bald. That's what it is. So where'd you guys meet? Tell us how you met.
We met technically on Facebook. We're those people. So we went to high school together, and we graduated the same year, but we never met in high school.
She says.
We did not meet in high school.
I'm almost positive there was a day where I saw her in the hall, and I said, "Hey, how are you?" And smiled really big, because, look at her. And she just kind of...
Oh, wow.
This coming from the man that can't remember what he ate for breakfast this morning.
Listen.
Fair enough.
Listen, that usually doesn't happen until Raisin Bran, but that's fine.
Right. So we met on Facebook.
Okay.
He reached out, and we were chatting because that's what you did in 2010. And he invited me to come to his church, Mountain View, at the time, and I blew him off multiple times, and finally my sister ended up visiting there, so I went with her and called him or texted him and was like, "Hey, I'm going to come to your church this morning," and he said, "Oh, I've been helping my Mima all morning." He was asleep in the bed.
Yeah, I lied.
So 10 to 1, that afternoon pigeon.
To be fair, I had helped her the night before,
Yeah.
so it was a lie.
It was a lie. So let it go right here in front of
Yeah,
everybody.
it was a lie.
He got dressed really quick, and he showed up and did not speak because he was so nervous. And he ended up reaching out and asking me on a date, and for some reason, even though he didn't talk the first time we met, I said yes. And the rest is history.
And here you are.
Here we are.
With 2.5.
2.5.
2.5,
Yep, that's right.
yeah. So listen, I think it'd just be helpful sometimes just to dive right in. So why don't you guys kind of share why you're up on this stage and just tell them a little bit about your story, about how God has restored some things.
So in 2017, I had an affair that really, after a lot of time has passed, more thinking about it, going through counseling and things like that, and talking to other people, looking back, I've kind of seen a trail of events of what led to that. And there was what I was always heard growing up in church, and I read Every Man's Battle before we got married, and it's nothing. At the time, I didn't have any issues that I needed. I felt that I needed to read that book, but it was one of those where I was a planner and wanted to have that ready, and obviously, I fell into it anyway. But it probably started in early 2012. We had Judah. I guess it happened when we had Judah. When we had Judah, our first child, I was out from work, and at the time I was working night shift, and so I was gone 12 hours a night from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And for whatever reason, when I came back from my paternity leave, I had been outcasted from the shift. And for whatever reason, still to this day, I've asked each individual one-on-one, and I still don't understand why, but I got outcasted, and that kind of put me in a position of, I guess, going back to my childhood of being unwanted or feeling neglected or left out, or being the outcast. And that one little thing, I think, kind of sparked a hole for Satan to start wiggling into. And then it was one thing after another after that. We had built, in our marriage, we had built walls. We don't text people of the opposite sex. We're not alone with people of the opposite sex. We had all rules that we had done, just not because of out of jealousy, but out of we wanted to be safe, and respectful. And those walls started slowly. We started taking those walls down, and in the moment, it felt justified or righteous to do that. There were things for work when I moved upstairs into investigations. There was no way getting around it. I had to text people of the opposite sex, whether it be DSS or the solicitor's office or, even other investigators, things like that. It just kind of happened. So we even talked about it. We even had a conversation about saying, hey, look, I don't have a choice. I've got to do this. And then that opened the door there. And then I later met Frank. Let's call her Frank.
Can we call her Frankie?
Sure. I later met Frank. I didn't want to say a name because there's bound and determined.
Are there any Frankies in the room? Frankie. No, there's not a Frankie in the room. Oh my God. We didn't see that because of the lights. There's a Frankie in the room. All right, Frank it is.
Okay. So I later met Frank, and it started out.
Frank.
Yeah, female Frank.
Female Frank.
Female Frank. I met female Frank. And that was, she worked at an organization that I had to work with quite often with my work. And it started out just work things. And then that progressed to, I guess, what would be called as an emotional affair. I was getting fed from her things that I felt that I needed. But in the moment, I actually didn't realize that that's what I was getting. I didn't even know that I was getting anything from that person, and nor did I realize that I needed it. At the moment, it was just something that was happening, and that progressed to a physical affair. Ultimately, over the whole course, I think it lasted like 6 months, until the culmination when everything came out. And throughout that, I had even throughout that tried to say, "Hey, this is it. Stop." At no point did I ever have any intentions of ever leaving Tanya. Did I feel like she would probably leave me? Yes. But I knew that I loved Tanya. I knew that I loved my family. I don't know why. I don't know that I'll ever really fully understand why. But throughout that, it had gotten to the point where every time I tried to get out or said, no more, we got to stop, it would last about a week. And lo and behold, the one day that everything went wrong at work, me and Tanya had gotten an argument that morning, and one of my cases got dropped down to something that was just absolutely outrageous, or I had just seen something that you don't want to see. That would be the minute that I would get a text message, and I'd fall into it. It would reel me in.
That makes me think about the verse, in the Bible, God told Cain, he said, "Cain, be careful, because sin is crouching at your door." Right? And so when walls and guardrails begin to come down, sin has easy access to your heart.
That's right.
Right? And so I was just kind of thinking about that as you were talking, I was sitting there thinking, man, sin was just crouching right there, ready to pounce at the first opportunity it was given.
What I realized is basically grooming had happened. Satan groomed me. My choices, I made those choices, but I had gotten groomed to the point where each little thing didn't feel like an issue. And then those things just kept getting bigger and bigger, allowing this massive portal to open up for this to happen. And then I fell into it, and Satan created a perfect storm, and I made the wrong choice. And then, thankfully, by the grace of God, Tanya was willing to stay and work. If you want to talk about that part.
So I found out 6 months in, and when you go from being best friends, and then you have a baby, and then he went from working night shift to day shift, things changed very quickly for us. And so you don't know if things are changing because there's a problem or if things are changing because they change. And so for a while, you just kind of ride on the coattails of that, and you don't know if it's you don't know if it's you don't know if it's a problem yet. You just kind of go with it for a while. But there came a point where I knew there was a problem. I knew subconsciously that something was going on, but I didn't know what it was. And you never want in your marriage to assume the worst. You never want to assume that the worst thing that you feel like that could happen in your marriage, apart from losing a child or losing each other, you never want to assume that is what's happening. So, for a while you kind of put it to the back burner, and you tell yourself that it's you or that it's this or that. But I knew something was off, very, very wrong. And so ultimately it came to a point where we didn't really look at each other's phones, and maybe that's a safeguard we should have had in place, but we just trusted each other very, very fully because of the boundaries we had put in place a long time ago. So I ended up looking at his phone one morning, and I found a lot of things that I shouldn't have that no one ever wants to see. And that's what brought it to a head. And I confronted him about it. I was 5 months pregnant at the time with our second, and our oldest was 18 months. No, he wasn't. He was just over a year. And I felt like everything fell apart. Everything hit ground zero. It didn't just explode. It was completely torn down. Everything I had known. And so I took my oldest to daycare and just drove around for a while. And that day, we lived what felt like years in one day. And we, talked through some things. I was very angry. I wanted to know why. And that's probably the hardest question you can ask when things break apart and break down. Because there isn't a why. There isn't an answer to that question that will match what's happened. So we kind of had a decision to make, and based off of the things that he said, that kind of what he had just said to everyone here, is that it was an accident, kind of. I mean, yes, those were his decisions, but he was like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know, but I want to fix it. I want to stay. And I think that changes things when the person that has made this tragedy wants to fix it. It could have and would have gone a lot differently, and other people's stories do. But based off of just his remorse, I told him, I said, I don't know if we can fix this. I don't know if this is fixable, because your marriage isn't supposed to survive that. But I said, I'm willing to try if I know that you really want this, because here's your out. And looking at the person that you love and saying, you can leave, but I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. So he had that decision to make. And when he said, I want to fight for this, and I said, I'm willing to try, but I don't have a lot of hope in this. We began the process of allowing the Lord to rebuild.
Wow. So you said a lot of really interesting things there, but I kind of want to ask you a very specific question. You said that he told you that he was willing to do the work, and you were willing to do the work too. Is that a decision that was easy for you to come to? How did that play out in space and time? Was it you had this argument, and then he's like, I'm sorry, I want to work on it. Okay, we'll work on it. Or was there more to that?
There was a lot of years of walking with Jesus that led me to that point. Mm-hmm. Growing up, my family did a lot wrong. We have a big story just as a family too, but ultimately my parents did something so right by me. They gave me Jesus.
That's good. It's okay.
And I'll be forever thankful for how they gave me Jesus. So I had years of walking with him and seeing his goodness and seeing his grace on our family. I saw my biggest hero in the world, my mom, walk through years of forgiveness. She showed me what forgiveness looks like, whether I always agreed with her or we always got along. She was an example of forgiving someone. That being said, I did not want to be like her in that I just keep allowing the same things to happen over and over again at the name of forgiveness. But I also had years of walking with Jesus that said that he is good even when my situation isn't good. He rescues and restores and brings healing in places that do not seem like they can have healing. And I had seen that for years and years and years. I was still contending for healing in some areas, but I had seen the beauty of what he can do. I knew that. I didn't just watch it from afar. I saw it close up in my own life.
Wow.
And so knowing these things about his character, not being able to fully reconcile the whole he allows these things to happen. Some of my theology was definitely tested with this situation, but I had seen him come through. And I knew that if there was any hope, or if there was any possibility of restoration in our family and restoration for our marriage, he could do it. Now, whether that was the right choice to make or not, I didn't know. That's why I gave myself the out of, hey, I'm going to try here, but I don't know that it can be fixed.
Yeah.
But I felt like my children deserved me to try. I love him very fully, and I always have. So I didn't have it in me from my experiences growing up. I didn't have it in me to just say, I'm done. Because the thing is I understood, even in that place, that whether I walked away or I stayed, it was going to be hard. There wasn't an easy decision. Walking away, you're still picking up the pieces. You're still rebuilding. Staying, you're doing it in a different way, but there is no easy out. And that's what a lot of people don't realize with an affair, is that if you walk away, it feels easier, or it sounds easier, and the trust part doesn't necessarily come, but it would come later. I would have to learn to trust again somehow. So I understood those things, and I think that was just my time walking with Jesus, and I think it was just supernatural wisdom. I mean, it's nothing that I did, because, no one knows how they're going to respond when everything falls apart.
That's really good. She preached a little sermon right there.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
She took y'all to church. Yeah? Yeah. I wonder, I know there's some people in this room this morning, their marriage is a mess. And that's putting it very churchy.
We feel you.
Yeah, if I could use the appropriate terms in a church building, most people probably wouldn't come back, But some of you guys, your marriage is a disaster. Like, it's an absolute wreck. And you come in church and you do a good job of making it look like it's not. What would you say to those people? What would you, if somebody came up to you in a private conversation and said, hey, listen, I've never been able to forgive, or I don't know that I can, what would you say?
I would say that, number one, for anybody who's in the midst of something, speaking out of experience, it can't stop until there's a catalyst, and it has to be a catastrophic catalyst of her finding out and just laying everything out on the table, wholeheartedly everything. It was a complete and utter destruction of everything we knew. It was total devastation of nothing but ash. And the only way that anybody can, or anything can come back from that, is God. I had to learn in the moment. I didn't think that I could be forgiven. And I realized in counseling that was also twofold. I didn't think that I could be forgiven by Tanya, because who would? Why? How? I couldn't forgive myself for that. I still don't know how she did it. And then also, how could I ever be forgiven by God? Because that's his daughter. And if it was my daughter, I sure as heck isn't going to. No.
Let's just stop right there. You're
Fair
still
enough.
employed, and I don't want to have to be involved in that conversation. So, Frank is his daughter's name, for the record.
Out of that devastation, I would say that it is possible. What seemed impossible, and every once in a while you would get a glimpse of maybe possible, but I guarantee you within the next few hours it's going to seem impossible again. And that's going to go on for quite a while, but it is possible. And it takes everything that you have and more. And most of all, it takes God being the center of all of it.
That's good.
I would also add to that what you've kind of, a theme that we've had throughout this series is that hidden hurts can't heal. What happened in the dark was never going to heal in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was brought to light, that was when things were able to have the possibility of being rebuilt and healed. So community plays a big part in that. We were not in a church at the time for various reasons. We had both grown up in church, but we were not in a church at the time. We didn't have solid community, so we didn't have people. We might have had them separately, but we didn't have that together. And what was the best avenue for us to heal was counseling. A godly, biblical counselor was what we needed. She gave us so much insight. She taught us a lot of things. She taught us how to forgive each other. She taught him how to forgive himself. She taught me how to not see myself as the problem. And just so many things. We could spend hours talking about all the things she taught us, and it was Jesus in her, and she would always tell us that. He was using her for the healing process.
I love it.
And so I think that community and counseling, we're big advocates for counseling. No matter what's happened, we're not the marker for, should we go to counseling? Don't wait until it comes to an affair.
Yeah.
Investing and allowing people to invest in you that really care for you. Allowing people to walk that journey with you. Whether it's an affair or just a really hard season in your marriage, a few people, not everyone, a few people that you can trust.
Yeah.
Is what really brings that home, I think. It's what really
Absolutely.
helps heal that.
Well, that's one of the reasons I think this series is so helpful for all of us is, we want to be the kind of church to where you can come in with your junk and be loved and supported. And I want to be people's cheerleader. Your marriage is a wreck, but man, we're cheering. You got 160 people in here. Woo, let's go Marlows, And so I think that's important. But one of the things I think the church, generally speaking, has done poorly is allow things like this to come out to where, and it's really easy for us to, we're so sorry that he cheated on you, and we'll love on you, and we'll support you. How dare you, you dirty, rotten dog, that's how, but that's really the offender and the offendee. God calls us to love them both and to love them both equally and to support them both equally and to be there for them both equally. That's who God, he doesn't call us to like some and dislike others, right? Unless they're religious people, and we'll kick their tables over. It's totally cool. Jesus did. And so here's the thing, though. That's I think one of the reasons you probably had such a hard time forgiving is it even possible? Well, what if we were a church that modeled that? Forgiveness? It shouldn't be abnormal for this in church. Outside the church, okay, fine. We ain't talking about that. But in the church, Jesus is at. Restoration should be normalized. Salvation, I get excited about this stuff because it's what we're seeing. I'm like, wow, God, you're amazing. This is crazy. And God's like, it's just normal when I'm around. Yeah. Really. The problem is that that's a different sermon. So, maybe the last question. So, marriage and forgiveness has kind of been restoration, forgiveness has kind of been a little thread today. Two things. Please tell someone out there that may be having a really hard time forgiving themselves for making some poor decisions. Right? Tell them, give them something, whatever you would want to tell yourself, if you could go back and tell yourself, hey, forgive yourself. And then I want you, for the person out there that has just absolutely been done wrong in the worst kind of way, what would you tell them? So you start, you kind of wrap us up.
Take a deep breath, get on your hands and knees in your floor, and go in prayer and talk it out. Don't pray for forgiveness. Don't pray for, well, I'm not going to tell you what to pray for. But have a conversation is what I'm saying. Not so much just asking for something, but have a conversation with God about how you do that and how to forgive yourself and how you can show your significant other how you can be forgiven, and know that God already forgave you. It's not that you're still working for it. He already did.
I wish he's like, I am not going to cry. I am a tough man. I am not going to cry. You did so good all the way up to the end. You were fighting them back the whole time. I know they can't see that, but I can. I think that's really good, and here's why. I think a lot of people in here think God's mad at them. But probably the most famous verse in all of Scripture tells us something. John 3:16. For God was so mad at you. That's not what it says. It says, for God so loved you. And we've gotten this notion that listen, God knows you're going to mess up. He knew you were going to mess up before you were born. Congratulations. Welcome to the Mess Up Club. I'll order you a shirt, right? Like welcome to, really, God knows. He knew what you were going to do. He knew what you were going to do today, and he knows what you're going to do tomorrow. And guess what? He says, I love you enough, right? And so I think that's really good. God's not mad at you. He actually wants you to come to him and be like, Dad, I really screwed this one up. And I don't know how to get myself out of this. I need your help. And he's the kind of God that gets on the floor with you and cries with you and puts his arm around you. And before you know it, he's kind of lifting you back up, right? It's really good. It's really good. All right. The person that, I gave you the messed up one because that's all churchy. We went church there. The person that's having a hard time forgiving someone.
I think that forgiveness is misunderstood a lot of times. So I think that a lot of times we see forgiveness as a gift to the offender that we have to offer them when they're sorry and they have remorse. And through a lot of prayer and a lot of searching the heart of the Father for what that even looks like and what that means, I have come to understand that forgiveness is more of a key. It's not a gift. It's a command. We're commanded to forgive. And Lisa TerKeurst, in her book, Forgiving What You Can't Forget, kind of breaks this down beautifully. And so if anyone's struggling with that, I would recommend reading that book. But she kind of talks about forgiveness being twofold. I really love this, so I'm going to kind of use her words here, that forgiveness is both an action in one moment and a process. We think it's just a process. And then it's like, okay, you're sorry and you're remorseful, so here's my gift to you of forgiveness. It's not that. Forgiveness is a command that we are told, you forgive like I've forgiven you. So if you love Jesus and you are forgiven by him, that is your command. So it's an act within one moment. And our counselor even told us to write out. She had this, it might sound cheesy, but she had this paper, and it said, it was like a contract. You fill in your name, forgive the person that offended you for everything they've done up until this point. And you sign your name. And so when Satan brings up in your mind, as he does sometimes, that all the offenses that have happened to you, you can look at that date and that contract and you say, no, I forgave this person. And that act signifies, I'm not going to dwell on what has happened. I'm going to allow this person freedom, and I'm going to allow myself freedom, because it's really, forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. You know, you forgive them to set yourself free from those chains. You don't forgive.
That's good.
But I do also think it's a process too. You know, you can't just be like, okay, well, I forgive, everything's fine
Hunky
now.
dory.
Yeah. So I think that it is twofold, like Lisa Turker says so beautifully, and that you forgave this person, but now comes the feeling. You know, we act our way into feelings. That's something that our counselor told us. You act your way into feelings. You don't feel your way into actions. So if you don't feel like forgiving someone, you're probably not going to, if you think that that's how forgiveness works. But if you act your way into feelings, okay, this is the act that I've done. I've forgiven this person. Now I'm going to continue reminding the devil that he is forgiven. This person is forgiven as I have been forgiven, until it feels like I've forgiven them.
Wow.
So that was something, and like I said, none of that is all things that people that shepherded our hearts beautifully through this season have taught us. And that's another reason why I think that community is so important, because you learn from people, you learn from testimony, you know, and that's why we wanted to share.
Yeah.
So you learn from testimony that says it is possible, you know, restoration, hope, forgiveness is possible.
Absolutely possible. It's so good. Thank you guys so much. It was like, man, like I wish I had been able to take some notes. We might recreate this so I can take some notes. And so, yes, it is recorded. If you have the app, you can watch it on the app. Hey, listen, can I just share with you for just a second? You said something that you have to act your way into feelings. And so sometimes the action is one of the most difficult things to do, but an action is literally just one step at a time. It's one foot in front of the other. And so here's how we're going to end the service. The worship team, you guys can come on up. And thank y'all so much. Man, y'all did so good. Y'all give it up. And so, here's how I want to end this service today. Maybe your marriage is a wreck. Maybe it is. I don't know. And you want God to do something. I think some great advice is to take that first step, followed by a sequence of steps. Maybe you're in here and you've had something done to you, and you know that there's some unforgiveness in you, and you're ready to be free from the shackles of unforgiveness. And you're ready just to be free from it. One step in front of the other. You guys can come on. Maybe you're here and you're the offender. And you just feel like, you know what? God, I have screwed this up so royally. I have just absolutely messed this up, and I just need to know you love me. It's the same action. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's the same action. And so the worship team's going to start playing and singing in just a moment. And here's how I'm going to ask you to do. I'll be down here. The Barlows are right over here. If you want to come down and they pray for you, they're happy to pray for you. I would love to just meet you down here and put my arms around you and just say, hey, Jesus isn't done. Hope is possible. Restoration is possible. Healing is possible, because we serve a God that is still in the business of doing those things. That's why we're having these conversations. And so this front's going to be open. And we are the kind of church that when someone takes that first step, we support. And so here's what you're going to do, church, because I know you pay attention anyway. When you see someone take that first step, because we celebrate people walking toward Jesus and acting their way into feelings. We don't shame people We don't hold people back. We celebrate. Amen? And so I'm going to ask everybody to stand. And if that's you, right where you are, just come on up front. I'm going to meet you down here. And when you see someone walk that aisle, go ahead. Put your hands together for them this morning. Y'all ready? Let's go.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. 'Cause you are miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, and Lord, I worship you. 'Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
Hey guys, Pastor Keith here. I just wanted to hop on and say thank you for tuning in. I hope that today's message encouraged you and blessed you. If you want to find out more about the Grove Church, go to bethegrove.com. You can submit prayer requests, you can support this ministry there, and we would love to get connected and hope to meet you soon.